Hello everyone, this is Professor Reimer. This video is from my world history class on Monday, February 8th and Tuesday, February 9th. It is entitled Unit 6, DOL 3, the Atlantic Slave Trade. In this lesson, we will explain the impact of the Atlantic slave trade on West Africa and the Americas by writing a reflection. And we're going to focus today's lesson around this big question. How did the institution of slavery set the social framework for the European-dominated Americas? And let me also say, this lesson on the Atlantic slave trade is a part of the Columbian Exchange, which you studied last time. So remember, the Columbian Exchange is this transfer of plants and animals between Old World and New World. Well, enslaved persons, were a part of that transfer. Okay, so I want to make clear we're still talking about the Columbian Exchange. We're just looking at one piece of it, a very important, influential piece, and that is the Atlantic slave trade. So here we go, as always, with our preview. I put on the screen here a timeline of significant African and African American events from slavery today. Primarily, these are from the United States, but also from other countries. As you read them, and I'm going to have you pause, and so you can take time to read them. As you read them, make a mental note. Are they a positive, step forward for Africans and African Americans, or are they a negative, step backwards? So think about those questions as you pause and read this timeline. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so here are some more events. I couldn't put the timeline all on the same screen, so here are events from the 20th century as well as some discussion questions. So pause the video again, read through the rest of the list, and I will see you in the chat, and hopefully we can have a discussion around these four questions. So pause the video. I'll see you in the Google Meet. All right, welcome back to the video. Hopefully we had a really fruitful discussion around that timeline, and I hope you saw just how long and arduous and difficult the process has been for Africans and African Americans to gain civil rights and human rights. And that process, as we've seen from the protests of Black Lives Matter, especially the last summer after the tragic death of George Floyd, that fight, that struggle, it continues, and it has historical roots, and those roots are in the Atlantic slave trade. So in this part of the lesson, I want you to gather information about the Atlantic slave trade, and you can do it in one of two ways. So you can read the textbook section on the Atlantic slave trade, and I put the exact name of the lesson there, Chapter 17, Lesson 2, pages 4 and 5. Or you can check out the Atlantic slave trade crash course video, which I'll put in the assignment. And as you are either reading or watching the video, I want you to take notes on this PDF that I've placed in the Google assignment. So pause the video now, gather this information, and by the way, as you do it and put it in Google Classroom, I can watch and I can see. So so be doing it, so that way I can check and make sure that you're getting the correct information and the right kind of information. All right, so pause the video and let's do this now. Okay, welcome back to the video. In this next part of the lesson, I want us to engage with a cast painting. Now, I've broken it up into 3 different slides, but it is the same painting. And if you are with me in the Google Meet, we'll do this live over in the Google Meet. I just think it'd be just a rich resource to discuss. But if you're doing this, asynchronously, you're not in the Google Meet, then go ahead and do it anyway, because I think you'll really gain a richer understanding of our big question about how the slave trade, really set the framework for this, stigmatization and reduction in class that African Americans still face. So either pause the video and meet me over in the chat, or we'll stay here and we'll go through this this painting. All right, so just as we go through, make some observations about this piece of art. What do you notice? What do you see? Right? Who are the people? What are the colors? If you can read the labels, what are they saying? Just make some observations. If you need to pause the video while we're going, feel free to do that. All right. So remember, same painting. This is just the middle section of the painting. Who do you think painted this piece of art? In other words, where did he come from? Or was it a woman? Was it a man? How old is he? What was his social class? What was his training? Remember, we talked about in the first lesson about the breakdown of the social classes in Latin America, right? With the Peninsulares on top and the Creoles, and then the mixed people, the mestizos and the mulattoes, and then the Native Americans, and then the enslaved persons. So, which one of those peoples do you think might have painted this piece of art? And lastly, so again, same piece of art. That first slide was the top part, and then that last slide was the second part, middle part. Now this is the bottom of the painting, and I'll put the link to the full painting in the assignment, so you can view it on your own. So why do you think this piece of art and others like it? Because there were many of them made. Why? Why did Europeans make this? Write it down, pause the video, and then meet me back here. All right, welcome back to the video. I thought it would be great if I shared with you this article from Khan Academy, giving us a little bit more information about these caste paintings, which we just got done examining. So I'm going to read most of it, and I'll also post a link in the assignment. So in America, people are born in diverse colors, customs, temperaments, and languages. From the Spaniard and the Indian is born the mestizo, usually humble, quiet, and simple. So states an inscription of Jose Joaquin Magon's painting The Mestizo, made in New Spain. That's the name of Spanish colonial Mexico during the second half of the 18th century. The painting displays a Spanish father, and I think we have it right here, yep, an indigenous mother. Maybe that's a different one. Oh no, that's it. With their son, and it belongs to a larger series of works that seek to document the inter-ethnic mixing occurring in New Spain among Europeans, indigenous peoples, Africans, and the existing mixed-race population. This genre of painting, known as pintores de castas, caste paintings, attempts to capture reality, key point here, yet they are largely fictions. So let's read further. And by the way, you can see it there. Typically, casta paintings display a mother, father, and a child, sometimes two. The family model is possibly modeled on depictions of the Holy Family, showing the Virgin Mary, Saint Joseph, and Christ as a child. You might have remembered, we saw those in the lesson when we looked at the Renaissance art. Casta paintings are often labeled with a number and a textual inscription that documents the mixing that has occurred. You might have seen that in the painting that we looked at, the little writings underneath, that's what was happening. The numbers and textual inscriptions on Casta paintings create a racial taxonomy, akin to a scientific taxonomy. Right? You studied this in biology: kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. In this way, Casta paintings speak to Enlightenment concerns, specifically the notion that people can be rationally categorized based on their ethnic makeup and appearance, which we now know to not be true, not accurate. But at the time, people were trying to sort people, different groups of people, based on their appearance. And you see that in these Caste paintings. So they are commonly produced in sets of 16, and that you see one example. The one we looked at was also an example, right? Rows of 4, rows of 4, rows of 4, rows of 4. The first position of the Casta series is always a Spanish man and an elite indigenous woman occupied by their offspring, a mestizo, which denotes a person born of these two parents. Remember, mestizo in a broad way means just mixing. And as the Casta series progresses and the mixing increases, some of the names used in Casta paintings to label people demonstrate social anxiety over inter-ethnic mixing and can often be pejorative, which is a fancy word for being rude and disrespectful, right? And hopefully we had that discussion when we talked about the painting that we examined, that as you go down this social ladder, this people's skins get darker, the clothes get less fancy, and the names that are given get meaner, to be honest. For example, a Spaniard and a mestizo produce a castizo, burned tree. Ooh, Ooh, so mean. While a Spaniard and a Morisco, who's a Muslim who had been forced to convert to Christianity, produced, get this, an albino torna atrás, return backwards, and a no te entiendo, I don't understand you. I mean, look at these kinds of phrases. I mean, just offensive. And this is how the Spanish were describing these various mixings. You see another example right there. So here's the important part about these casta paintings. They convey the perception that the more European you are, the closer to the top of the social and racial hierarchy you belong. Pure-blooded Spaniards always occupy the preeminent position. Remember what those are called? Peninsulares. And are often the best dressed and the most civilized. But I don't know about you. I wouldn't call that best dressed. I mean, what is happening with this wig? But they thought at the time that made them look more civilized. Here's some more examples. Yeah, I want to get to this last part. Who commissioned these works and why? Which is one of the discussion questions we had. The existing evidence suggests that some of these Casta series were commissioned by viceroys, or the stand-in for the Spanish king in the Americas. That's in Spanish literally what it means, like representative of the king, who brought some Casta series to Spain upon their return. Other series were commissioned for important administrators. However, little is known about the patrons of Casta paintings in general, yet we can infer to a degree who might have commissioned such paintings. Because Casta paintings reflect increasing social anxieties about inter-ethnic mixing, it is possible that elites who claim to be of pure blood and who likely found the dilution of pure-bloodedness alarming were among those individuals who commissioned Casta paintings. In other words, they're making these paintings to show how pure and important they were. They didn't look like these other people, these darker skinned, non-pure individuals. And if you're thinking to yourself, wow, this we've studied this in history. Yeah, we studied it when we looked at classical India and the four varnas, right? The head, the arms, the legs, and the feet of the Indian god. That was supposedly how society was mixed, right? We also call that a caste system, and this comes from the Spanish word caste, the Portuguese word is caste, the Spanish word casta, right? It also reminds me, because my daughter is a huge Harry Potter fan, it reminds me of the purebloods, right? And the mudbloods, these two terms that the wizards in Harry Potter world used to describe the people who were supposedly pure and those who had some muggle blood in them. So it is something that we as humans have attempted to separate people based on race, but those separations are not natural. We as humans have created these categories, and we often use art, as we've just been looking at, as a way to quote unquote prove our theories about these separations, but they're not natural. All right, we're back to our PowerPoint. We're nearing the end of the engagement piece, but let's pause and think about this. Keeping in mind the timeline of events from before, the preview. Think about where Black people have been placed in society. Even when Black people were free, why were they still at the bottom of society? Pause the video, reflect on that. Maybe we can talk about it in the chat, but if not, we'll go forward. All right, why are they still at the bottom? It's this legacy of centuries and centuries of enslavement in which people from Africa were used as laborers in the Americas on those plantations, as you read about in the book, or you saw in the video, right? And so they were viewed over time as simply chattel, right? Akin to like a work beast, like a horse or like an oxen, right? It was just a way for the Europeans to produce these cash crops that were the basis of colonial society, right? These attitudes that developed at that time and were reinforced by those paintings that we looked at are still with us today. All right, so now let's end this engagement piece with reading two accounts of the Atlantic slave trade. Remember, in this lesson, we are looking at the impact of the Atlantic slave trade. And I think to give a full account or a fuller account of the slave trade, let's read a passage by a French slave agent. So in other words, a European perspective, and then an excerpt from Olada Equiano, who was, as it says there, an enslaved African who gained his freedom. So you're going to see a European perspective and an African perspective. I've put these student handouts 3 and 4 in the assignment. So go read them now. There are some discussion questions at the end that will help guide your reading. And once you're done, right, you're going to finish up this lesson with this reflection. And I'm going to have you do this on your own in a Google document. What was the overall attitude of Olada Equiano and of John Barbauld? So what were their attitudes? How did their emotions and descriptions differ? And why was that? So now we're getting more to this analysis of, okay, why did they come at this topic of the Atlantic slave trade in an emotionally different way, and where did that come from? And lastly, I want to hear your thoughts about this dehumanization of the black slaves. Right? This is a reflection that I want to bring in some of your own life experiences or those of your family, and I want you to be honest. Be honest with yourself and with your writing. So I'm going to leave you there. Read both the handouts, both of Equiano and of Barbauld. Come back. Use these questions to write your reflection. This is what I'm going to grade for today's assignment. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in class.